Greetings and welcome to this whole new After Effects and FreeformPRO session. Yes, FreeformPRO. Today we're gonna use this marvelous plugin created by Chris Bobotis at Mettle, and at the time I'm recording this tutorial, yesterday was his birthday, so yeah, happy birthday, Chris. And we're gonna use the Voronoi diagram principle. So we're gonna also look at how we can use this is in native effects and After Effects. So in mathematics, Voronoi diagram is a way of partitioning a plane, and I'm not gonna read all this text, but you can just go check it out on Wikipedia if you want to learn about it. It's also called a tessellation. And it's used in a large number of fields, mainly in science and technology, but also including visual arts. And they're named after this guy, Georgi Voronoi. So he discovered these amazing mathematical patterns. So we're gonna look at how we can create these Voronoi landscapes using FreeformPRO plugin. So at the same time, it's a nice way to learn about this cool plugin. And of course, I'd rather tell you right away, it's not going to look as photorealistic as in a true dedicated 3D software, but it's going to render pretty fast since it's just in After Effects with this plugin. So let's start away by creating a new composition. Control N, Command N, and let's call this FreeformPRO Voronoi edit, and let's hit OK. In this composition we'll create a new solid, and let's hit Control Y. So let's call it freeform edit, and let's hit enter. First, before we apply our effect, we're gonna need to create a displacement texture. We're gonna tell Freeform to use as a displacement map. So let's do that. We're gonna create a new solid, Control Y. Let's call this displacement map. Let's hit enter, and we're gonna right away pre-compose this. So Control Shift C, and we're gonna leave all attributes in this composition. So let's do that, and let's double click in here to get inside, and we're gonna apply this effect called cell pattern. And unfortunately this effect is only 8-bit, so we would have a little bit more control if it was 32, but we'll do with that. So here let's select plates HQ, and that'll give us this kind of a pattern. And let's animate this. So pretty simply we'll create a keyframe by hitting on the stopwatch on the evolution property here on frame 0, and let's go to frame 90, so 3 seconds at 30 frames per second, and let's make a whole revolution to that. So let's hit 1 here. So if we do that, it's going to animate this pattern. And let's also check this option here, which is going to make it loop. So this frame here is our last frame, and if I hit home to get on the first frame, frame 0 here, it's going to be the same, but in between it's going to have this interpolation. Pieces are going to move, and they are also going to flash. Their brightness is individually going to change, so they're going to when you think about how it's going to be used as a displacement, what's dark is going to be lower to near the ground, and what's bright, like all those white pieces, are going to be standing out real tall. So let's start with that. And also take notice that, like, if we want real smooth edges on our thing, the one thing that's given me the most issues with this technique, although it's very fast and very quick to set up and very fun to mess around with, but because of this effect, not really sharp edges, we can use this sharpness here to straighten it up a little bit. So compare that to the default value, it's gonna help us a little bit to make it more sharp on the edges. But keep in mind that the best, like if we would want to have perfect edges, we'd have to have that as a vector. So just that's the little downside about this. This effect is rasterized. It's not vector, so it's not gonna be perfect. But it's not Freeform's fault. It's the cell effect's fault. But if you know a way to create this kind of thing that would be easy to animate in Illustrator, for example, or if you can just trace this in Illustrator and use that, it's gonna take quite a longer amount of time, but it's gonna give you straight edges. Let's apply freeform on our solid here, and before we do that, we can probably call this texture, and also we're gonna pre-comp this. So Control Shift C before we apply freeform on this. Let's pre-comp that to have that inside a dedicated comp, because this will also act as the texture for freeform. So the composition we apply freeform on, so let's apply FreeformPRO on there. It's also gonna use this as a texture, so we don't apply this effect on a solid and then designate a texture inside this. It's gonna use whatever we apply this on, so keep that in mind also. So this, we don't need it to be active, we can turn it off, and let's double click to get inside our here, just to make it like a texture. So let's hit Control Shift Y to access this solid's properties, and let's make this a neutral gray. So let's put the values 128, 128, and 128. So that's going to be the perfect middle gray. And let's also create strokes on here. Why not? So quickest way to create strokes is duplicate this, call it strokes. Another way, yet one of the many ways to use this Venetian blinds effect, and let's apply this on there, and let's say 33%, and let's make this solid down below, let's make it all dark. So here are our strokes, and we can also select their width by messing around with that. So let's make it 5 and 33. So this will determine how much of the space it takes in comparison to the rest. And we've put this solid down there just so it's not transparency that we have. We need just something that to be down there, and perhaps we can not make it totally black, but perhaps like some value pretty close to pure black, but not all the way to 0, 0, 0. So that's what we're gonna use as not as a displacement, but for our main texture. And maybe a little bit brighter. Oops. And let's get back. So let's get in the displacement mapping section here of our FreeformPRO effect, and let's select our displacement map composition. So nothing will happen. Let's increase our displacement height, and that will happen. So first, if you don't want to see the grids and control for this effect, we can uncheck this here, and now we can see what happens to our texture. So pretty interesting. But let's create some lighting so we can have some shadows on there. So first, let's make an ambient light. Let's call this amp, and we're gonna make it pure white. So to start off with that, let's hit OK, and let's also create Control Shift Alt L, another spotlight, and make sure that the cone angle is not 0, and let's hit OK. So we have one light here to play around with, and if this is checked in, then it should be refreshing automatically. So here we have some lighting here. We can aim it reset the position to have it back close to the center here, and let's bring it upwards on the right here, and let's aim like that. So that's gonna give us nice shadows, but you can see at first that it looks a little bit weird on there. Let's open up the tessellation here, and let's make sure that adaptive is checked. So that is gonna already give us a better result. And let's get ourselves a camera in there. So Control Shift Alt C to create a new camera, and let's make it 35 millimeters, or no, let's make it 50 millimeters, the default value. And let's create a new null. So Control Shift Alt Y. Let's make this null 3D and attach our camera to that. So this thing is right at the center here, so we can rotate it to look at it from a different angle. Right there. And as you can see, it might be a little uncentered there. So let's fix that. Let's have it rotated at 90 degrees, and let's get back to our freeform effect, and the displacement bias here, let's set it to 0. So we're looking at this from the center here. Alright, so let's get back at 0, and now we're on the top of our thing. We can shut off this thing here. So let's look at it from an interesting angle. So let's rotate it on Z here, minus 35, minus 45, and let's hit C to cycle between the different camera tools, and let's grab this one here, and let's hold Shift and drag upwards, so we can rotate on this angle here and get this kind of an angle there. Alright, and here I've set this kind of a lighting here, but mess around with it like until you get the result you want. Yeah, I did it pretty fast, so it might not be that cool, but it's pretty nice that we can also add some color in there directly with the light here. We can also control all this lighting through the material properties here. So let's bring the ambient down, so we're only affecting it with the diffusion. Alright, so let's have this repeated so we can cover more of the space. So we can open up the generator here, and that's gonna be like some kind of a repeater. And let's already set the spatial distribution to distribute equally from the center, so it's gonna double our repetition symmetrically. Let's start with the X, so we want 3 times, two times. Let's start with 1. So as we let's start with 2, because 1 is the one we have already. So let's bring this. I think our solid is 1080, so let's make it 1080, and let's have it 3 times. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and let's also repeat it on the Y. So let's have it also 3 times repeated there, and if we offset it on the Y 1080 also, then we're going to be covering more of the area without any with some problems here around where they connect, but that means we need to move this 100 less, so they're not too far one from another. And there are more options here as how they connect. For instance, here the instance mirroring, we can have them mirror on X, mirror on Y, or mirror both on X and Y. So that might not be exactly what we want here, because we can feel here the repetition. So let's have no mirroring, and so that's pretty fine. Let's zoom in with the camera with this tool that you can select by hitting C here to cycle between them. So that's nice. With freeform we have nice shadows that corresponds to our lighting. So that's pretty interesting. We don't have any ambient occlusion in this plugin, but we have true shadows, so that's pretty interesting. Let's look at how I like this, but I would like, for example, the sides of my pieces not to be affected by the texture, and we can't, like, these are not geometry pieces, they're only displaced stuff, so we can't really go down and select these faces individually. So we're gonna need to mess around in right in here in our texture there. So let's look at our displacement map. So this thing here, let's duplicate this, and let's call it Voronoi texture outline, and let's open up our freeform texture, and let's bring this in here, and let's double click. So we're gonna have this displacement map, which is gonna be the same as this one. We want to connect it to that, so whatever we change to our displacement map is gonna be affected in our Voronoi texture outline. Let's take this timeline and bring it over here, so we can have both the Voronoi texture outline here and our displacement map. So we have both our solids here, and let's connect those settings here. So we can get rid of the keyframes here. Let's alt click on the evolution, and let's bring it to this one here, and let's also hit E on the keyboard, and let's look at our other settings. So we want to make sure that they'll be the same. So not the cell pattern, because this one will change it, but all the other ones. So let's perhaps not the sharpness, but the disperse, the size, the offset, and all other tidying options. If we ever get those on, we'll connect those, but we don't need that. And then we're done. So we can work, we can close this here, and so we don't have to composition. Oh, that's pretty interesting. Let's get back in our Voronoi texture outline, and this is not our displacement map, but most of its settings is connected to that. And let's select, instead of the plates HQ, let's select pillow. So we're gonna have the same basic shapes, and they're gonna move the same, but they're not gonna look the same. So once we get back in the parent composition here, we have this that we can use, that we can set to stencil luma. So yeah, that will make some transparency, and it'll keep our area, and the area where our transparency is going to correspond to our faces that are not facing up, if you can understand this. And we'll be able to control that by setting this in another precomp. So let's get back on here, and oh, that's interesting. So let's precomp our freeform edit texture, but let's make sure that we keep this effect on there. So we want to hit Control Shift C and leave all attributes in there. So why did I come here? in our main comp. Call this main. And right in here now we have that, and we can simply create a new solid underneath and have it this color there. So let's get back here and see what we get. So basically we're gonna have our texture only on the top here, and on the sides we'll get this color that we have here. So let's make it a little bit darker. And then we can control right in here. If we get back to this one easy way, let's get back in here. We can control the width of that. Let's add some levels here, and if we bring that, we can make it sharper, and as close as we bring them, we can make our lines a little bit thinner. But let's set that to soft clamp so we can have them even thinner if we want, and then we can control them easily with the levels there. So that's what we have now as a texture. So as you can see here, it's not that perfect on the edges, because as you can understand, our displacement map is not perfect. So our displacement map is still that. So can we make it even sharper? Not really a good idea, because it's gonna make it even more screwed up. But we can add a blur here, and let's add a fast blur. So but we want to make sure that repeat edge is checked, and let's lock this down so we can still see it from here. So if we increase it too much, well, it's gonna completely make it round and weird, all weird on the edges. So let's keep it around a small value. But yeah, that's the only thing that you would have to have it all like vector shapes here to have it completely clean angles. Or if you know another way that you can make it nice and sharp and smooth on the edges, then I'd like to know. But let's keep that at 1, and let's see what options we have. Let's uncheck that, and let's see what other options we have here. In freeform, we can also smoothen the normals here, so this is also going to help a little bit to get those edges a little bit smoother. But again, if we increase it too high, it's going to kind of look weird. I'm going to save that. Let's try 28. So it's going to make some kind of a little bevel there. And oh, we need our lines to be a little bit larger. There. There's some transparency. Right, let's set a full black solid underneath everything to make sure. And let's shut this light down. Okay. Those lines are large enough, and I don't see why it happens there. It lights on this side. Yeah, you can also increase the amount of subdivisions if you want to make it if you want to have more details. So we can also add just one, not more than that, point lights. So this is gonna give us a little bit more light details here, but if you add two, then it's not gonna work with freeform. So let's make this one right there, and let's go to frame 90 and close down our loop here. So page up to get back one frame, and I'm just gonna make it quarter res just to look at what we get. So pretty cool. It's all animated and we have nice shadows. And it's all procedural and looping and all. So pretty cool. Let's create some depth of field. So one cool way to have it have what's close to us blurred and have a focus point in focus and everything around that to be blurred. So so in order to do that, oh yeah, we can also we can use some reflections in here like we do in trap code Tau. So let's get back to our freeform here, and right here in the reflection mapping we can set a reflection layer. So if we bring in let's get one of those, let's get the Graffiti Ruins from trap code bundle. So that's one that we can use here, and let's make it inside a comp, and let's get back in our, let's call that reflection, and let's get the main, let's bring our reflection in here. So we're gonna set it to equi-rectangular because it's like that they are, and let's select our reflection. So this is going to bring in some reflection in there, and we can also fix the anti-aliasing, but I won't do it right away because it's gonna take it's gonna be longer to render if I do that. So I'm gonna set it to low for the moment, and we can change the blending mode of our reflection, and we can also set the, we also want to use the displacement map for the reflection. Maybe we want to tell the reflection that this map exists so it knows. And we can smooth the normals here. And also, what if I turn off the specular? We have some specular control here. Can increase the our lights diffusion. there's also a pre-blur radius that we can apply on the displacement map. I don't know if this is going to help also. Yeah, this might like fix the edges, but also make it a little bit rounder. So I'm not sure if that's something that you want to pull too high. So let's try like that. And here I'm not sure that the reflection is incredible. We can control it here. Let's tone it down and set it to, just to give it a hint there, let's set it to 33. And oh, if we mirror it, we'll lose those pieces that were but then we have can we only mirror it on X or only on Y? Oh, that's not mirrored at all. And what's that mirror blending factor? I don't know what it does really. Not like we can change it. So yeah, if we want to add some depth of field to that, usually a little bit like I would do with Trapcode Tau. Once we're done with this composition here, we can duplicate this. So this will not be our main edit, but it'll be our depth of field blur map. And let's double click in here, and right there we can do like we did earlier if we want to keep the same camera angle. So in this we're not gonna use the lights, so we can delete them all. And let's bring that in here. So if we want to keep the same camera settings here, we can get on frame 0, open up the camera and the point of interest and the position, P and A, and here reveal the position, Shift R, the rotation, and then we can pick whip all that to here. So P, Shift R, Shift P, Shift A, and then we can go like click, whip, alt click, whip, alt click, whip, alt click, whip, alt click, whip. So whatever we do to this camera, and there are of course some scripts that allow us to do that on a single click, I think, but mainly what we're gonna do to the camera is gonna do the same in this composition that we called blur map. So let's close it down now, and let's get back in here, and let's get in there. We don't need the reflection, so we can turn everything off. But what we do need here is like one thing we could do in the render options, if we set it to depth instead, then we'll have that. So that's straight off the bat something we can use as a depth map, and we can control this. Look at how cool is that. We'll hit A to open up our camera options here, and we can control this even if it's set to off the depth of field here. We can control this with the focus distance. So no, we need this to be on actually. So let's bring this closer, and like we can change our focus point with that, but not really, because I would want a real focus point. Then I would want it like real white in this if I want to focus right there and have this become darker from the focus point. And I don't know that aperture or blur level change anything, and we don't want to change the zoom since we want to keep the same angle. So that's a little bit the limit. It's cool if we want to use that, if we want to focus on what's in the front. So let's try that. So now that we've made this the blur map, let's go back in main edit, and let's bring the blur map in here and bring it on top, so it's perfectly aligned with everything. And let's shut it off, and let's make a Control Alt Y. So let's make a new adjustment layer, and on this let's add a camera lens blur, so right on there. And let's check the repeat edge pixel. By default it's gonna blur all, so we're gonna tell it to use our DOF blur map here, and I think we're gonna click here on invert. So let's whoops, sorry there. So let's increase it drastically just to test it out. So there, everything is clear, and it becomes blurred as we get closer, and there it's focused but not that much, and it becomes blurred on the back. But let's look at another way to set our depth. So let's get back in here, and a little bit like I do with Tau and Mir, we're gonna do the same with freeform. So open up, we have a mist in the environment, we have a mist and a fog. So how cool is that? Let's set the render mode to full render, and now we don't want this to be applied on freeform edit texture, then we want it to be applied on a plain solid. So let's duplicate that, let's call it that. Alright, so let's get back to our DOF here, and the freeform edit texture, we're gonna replace it with the freeform edit texture DOF. Alright, nothing should change, because right in here what we needed this to be is simply a white solid. So nothing of our pattern here, just white solid, plain white solid. But we do have the same displacement map. See where I'm going? So now we can get back in here, and alright, so if I click here I have the true names. I'd rather have this that, and let's get in the first in the material properties, and let's make sure we're gonna crank up the ambient so it's totally white, and let's set the mist to a black color. And now we can control the mist X near and the mist R. So do I see it? Oh, because I gotta set it to linear. So let's go in the negatives here. So there. Alright, we have some kind of a front grading. And then we have a fog that we can set to linear, and let's crank that down. And this fog is also a black color, so if we bring it from the distance there, it's gonna close in. So we have our focus point now. Now we can bring this a little closer. it's kind of hard to change this one because it's got 3 levels. It's not just what's close and what's far. So let's start with that maybe. Oops. I'm trying to make it like I want to have a very white, strong white part there, but I want to keep the angle. Alright, let's reset all this. Let's start again. Let's start over. Reset, reset, reset. Alright, reset. So the Y there. Let's bring it closer there. A little bit on the X and there, and then we can also increase that there on the fog, and let's try that one. So that's a little bit better to create some kind of a tilt shift effect. Everything in the distance will be kind of blurred. So let's get back in here and try to make it a little better with that. And maybe we can decrease that to have it less blurred, but still keep the control to have that more blurred. And let's bring this a little bit closer, but a little bit further there. So let's try this back. That looks a little bit better. And then we can of course change the camera. Let's hit Control Shift Y so we can change the lens. So if we grab the 35 millimeters, it's gonna help it make it a little bit more. It's gonna help the sense of scale. But then see, we keep the same settings for the camera, but we still need to change its lens in the DOF blur map. So here, Control Shift Y, make sure we're also on 35 because we want to keep those the same. And now we can also now we've used the fog in the DOF, but we can also grab a little bit of fog for this one to cancel what's in the distance here a little bit. So let's go to our FreeformPRO and let's get to our environment, fog, and let's bring this closer. So we have some fog creeping from the distance in the back there. And of course, let's make sure that it's set to linear. So not that close, but this one. Come here from the distance. And maybe then we can get down a little bit. So I'm using this C2 cycle, and with this tool here, the pan camera tool, I'm gonna get down with the camera, and then I'm gonna rotate a little bit as well. And since we connected that, also we can rotate if I'm not happy with the angle that I got there. So that's pretty cool. And let's add a Control Alt Y, another adjustment layer. So this one is the blur, depth of field, DOF, and let's call this one CC. And we can add general curves to that, just to pop it a little bit on the contrast. Oh. Making a little bit of a nest curve here. So there we go. Let's render that. Pretty cool. So I hope you enjoyed this session, and as always, thank you very much for watching. See you next time.